Hello there again, and it's Blessed Sugan here with PM Express, and tonight we're focusing on the last 55 days, which has been a very grueling task for this fact-finding mission of 5 anti-corruption crusaders, being led there by the Northern Member of Parliament, Samuel Okujeto Ablakwa, who has now led this team of 5 individuals who've worked pro bono for the state in carrying out what government is describing as the Operation Recover or Loot report. The report is finally out with findings, and we are exploring the way forward after this 55-day period, as government is now revealing to us that after the set of 5, there is yet again another daunting task being loaded off to the Attorney General now to begin prosecution. We'll be getting into the details for you shortly, but take a look at this. Oral, as it is popularly called, began its work by opening up its offices to the general public. 3 main lines of reaching them. There was a hotline, the official website, and then the dedicated email address where so many messages began to flood the desk of the Northern Member of Parliament. And these anti-crusaders, anti-corruption crusaders that I just outlined to you earlier. Take a look at this. Over 2,417 complaints have been filed. 230 cases were submitted in terms of actual possible corruption cases. And guess what? The team decided to make a priority out of it. 44 cases were received from civil society groups, and they had to break it all down. Look at the potential cases in terms of asset recoveries, or perhaps the possibility of recoveries. They could be going as far as 21.1 billion in terms of the potential recoveries that may be done simply out of this 2,417 cases filed altogether. But for now, we're learning that 36 priority areas is what is amounting to just this figure alone. So imagine if all 2,417 cases were to be on the table for government. That's another story, and we'll be getting into the details of it. But for now, it is settled that the Attorney General indeed will be proceeding to carry out the priority areas and to target this initial 21.1 billion. That's way higher than the $3 billion bailout we're looking for from the International Monetary Fund. So it tells you the story about how this could do a significant good to the Ghanaian economy in terms of the anti-corruption fight. But look at where we were back in 2012. 45 was our score point in terms of how we were faring under the SWAL or NDC administration, one of John Mahama, if you want to call it as such. And look at where we dipped to in 2017. The Akufo-Addo administration came through and stagnated over the last 3 years. So right from 2019, when we inched up to 43, we've remained at that score over the last 4 years. So it's safe to say that in the last 4 years, no significant measures were taken to address corruption. Partly the reason why we've stagnated over the last 4 years. And many believe that if indeed all of these complaints are dealt with, and of course, particularly the ones coming in from civil society, are tackled, then we'll recover the assets. And of course, possibly we could be beating down this curve a bit further, or perhaps going up if nothing is done properly. Now, the next phase of oral, we understand, will be a phase of OPAL, if you want to call it as such. Operation Prevent or Loot. At least we're getting to hear that from some of the members of the oral team already. The phase now is to investigate. Next will be prosecution, which we're getting confirmation now from the presidency will start in a few hours from now. So the president has handed over to the Attorney General, but that's not the end of the story. As we speak now, the Attorney General, as we can confidently tell you from the perspective of the government, is beginning to take a cursory look at some of the files that have been brought before him, and here in the red, recover all the proceeds of corruption. So how will that be done? And what's the guarantee that this is a new regime in terms of the anti-corruption fight? Here's a quote from the president. He says that, quote, "To those who think that they can defraud the state and escape justice, let this serve as a strong warning that Ghana is no longer a safe haven for corruption." That's the promise by John Dramani Mahama. How will he achieve that? And how do we sustain that going forward? Be my guest tonight on PM Express as we look at this latest phase of the oral report, the findings, and the way forward. I'm Blessed Sugan. Welcome to the show. And this is brought to us by Syntex Tank, Pepsodent and Cavity Fighter, and also Academic Times. We'll tell you more about them when we get back from this break. Please stay. Thanks for staying with us on the Journey News channel. This is PM Express, and we're proudly supported by Syntex tanks. It is tough, it is strong, and of course the Pepsodent cavity fighter. Don't forget to always be on the lookout for that, because anytime you eat, there are particles trapped in between your teeth. So this is the time for you to obviously be opting for that. And this Valentine's Day, we all know that of course you need something strong, you need something to rely on, and that should be the Pepsodent cavity fighter. The Academic Times Journal is also supporting us tonight, and don't forget that they have the High G and Junior G, which are coming your way to impact society and help academic researchers to impact their society as well. So we'll be sharing the details with you on how you could reach them, and of course don't forget to be on the lookout for the Academic Times Journal. My guest for tonight, Shamima Muslim, is Deputy Presidential Spokesperson. We have Mary Ada, who's the Executive Director for the Ghana Integrity Initiative, and Vincent Ekwasefwa is a member of the Minority Caucus in Parliament, and also Member of Parliament for the Old Tafo constituency. But we'll be getting to them shortly. But I want to start off with you, Shamima, because today we had that strongly worded statement from President John Dramani Mahama, who says that the country will no longer be a safe haven for corruption. Does he really mean those words? And how is he typifying that to the average Ghanaian? Shamima, if you can hear me, the question is about this, the stern warning from the president to his appointees, and also giving that firm indication that the country would no longer be a safe haven for corrupt practices. I'm asking why so?
Because good evening to you, Blessing, and to your viewers this evening. Why so? Because this is what the people of Ghana have asked for. And so the president is merely reflecting the feel of the society, the expectation of the society, as he reminded all of us, today during the electioneering period. The oral offering was one of the most popular offerings across board. Wherever we went to across the country, the citizens were demanding greater accountability from those that are in positions of power and influence, and rightly so. Because if we continue to say that ours is a country that is rich in resources and that is resilient, that has been pillaged over centuries, and is still a going concern, it means we cannot continue to pay lip service to providing dignity to the mass of the citizens. And so over the years, we have all agreed that democracy in itself is getting a big hit. And many countries are reporting erosions in trust of our democracy, and in trust of our democratic institutions. And at the bottom of it is the unbridled corruption that continue to dissipate public funds at the expense of providing the basic necessities and offering dignified lives and opportunities for the citizens in whom we hold trust all of these resources for. So why so? Because this is what was expected, this is what was promised, and this is what is being delivered as we speak.
And of course, the reason why many are asking the question is also because of partly what we've been seeing over the last few days, if not weeks, of course, where the Attorney General is also equally dropping charges against former appointees of the erstwhile NDC administration. Just opposing that, there are many who are questioning really if the president is committed to this. Shamim, I hope you can hear me. Okay, we seem to be having...
I don't know if you can hear me, but yes. Our line seems to be breaking.
I was just asking the question that the concern for many is also about what equally the Attorney General has been doing. The fact that you have some charges being dropped against former appointees of the erstwhile NDC administration. Just opposing all of these, the question is the president really showing good leadership in that sense by saying that he's committed to the fight against corruption?
I think by no stretch of imagination can we compare what has been happening with regards to the discontinuance of some cases that have been pending for a while, comparing that to the instances that are coming up from the oral report, which in the coming days we would make in fact, the Attorney General would be addressing a press conference later this week. He will be telling Ghanaians exactly why some of the cases that have been pending, which we describe as political persecutions of political opponents, because of how long these cases have traveled, because of how contrived some of these charges were, because of how inconsistent the previous administration was in holding its own appointees, accountable by the same standards, even as some of the charges were quite flimsy. Take the issue of the of Osu Ampofo. Take the finance minister's case, for instance. All of it. Any close watcher of those cases would know that they were purely political persecutions. And it's just, in character with the outgone administration, because the last time they were in power, we saw those things. I'm saying that His Excellency John Dramani Mahama is the president in our recent history under whose watch members of his own government were brought before court, and those that were found to have breached the laws of the land paid the price for those same breaches. So if there's anybody we should have confidence in, that he is not going to cover up any member of his administration. Look, he has announced that even as we are going to start the operationalization of oral findings under the legal mandate of Ghana's Attorney General, Honorable Dominic Ayine, we are also going to bring on stream OPAL, Operation Prevent All Loot. He is the president under recent history who has announced, put in black and white in his own manifesto, that he is not going to allow any government official to engage in any state capture or any illegal acquisition of state assets. He has put it in black and white. He is committed to doing it, because there's got to be an end to lamentations. We cannot continue to lament over the things that are eroding our democratic gains and show no commitment in terms of leadership commitment to actually taking the steps that will halt those deteriorations. If there was a time ago that a redevelopment policy had its purpose, is it time for us to really look at it again because of the abuse of it? I mean, the ethical and moral arguments around this whole issue about state capture, I beg your pardon, is how on earth we can, with any conscience, purchase property that we know on the open market values more than sometimes 10 times the value for which we use our political positions to take those same assets. Nobody can justify that. And so in the coming days, the Attorney General will disclose comprehensively the reasons and grounds on which those cases that have been discontinued have been discontinued. 8 good years, the New Patriotic Party had to prosecute some of these cases. 8 good years that they had a very favorable representation in our courts. Excuse me to say, unfortunately, but we all know the perceptions around the packing of the court by former President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, and sometimes some of what people describe as procured outcomes from our courts. I am saying that in the 8 years of the New Patriotic administration, if they had any case at all against these political opponents that were facing persecution through the instrument of our law courts, they would have secured prosecutions and judgment, just as they did in previous tenures, and jailed those individuals. In the
I
coming
thought the
days,
wheels
the
of justice,
the
they
true
say, I
situation,
thought the wheels of justice, they say, grind slowly.
they do grind, but they must certainly come to an end. Otherwise, it becomes injustice. And if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it must certainly be a duck. So if these political persecutions look like what they are, there's got to be an end to even litigation of the worst kind.
How do we then how do we not confuse what you're doing with oral as a payback for perhaps some of these cases that you're dropping?
Lessons. Have you not been worried about some of the colossal amounts involved in some of the major scandals of this administration? Would you not want to see anybody answer any questions at all? I think you and us are all on the same platform. We must not give political actors any power, and that includes us, the NDC. We must not give them any power to think that at any point in time they can take the citizens for granted, do what they want, do with as they please with our collective resources, and go and enjoy whatever loot they may have illegally acquired through the instrument of their positional power. We must not grant that kind of freedom to political actors. There have been major scandals that Joy FM has reported on in the 8 years administration that you have called for something to be done about it. There's a reason why His Excellency, the former president, was called a clearing agent. Why so? Should we not take a second look at if the outgone administration showed no commitment in even investigating some of these matters, but rather clearing some of these cases even before investigations were to commence or be completed on those, specific, cases.
Right.
Take the issue of the cathedral, $58 million. There are so many issues arising out of that particular scandal. The Pualugu Dam, $12 million, dark sank in a project that is non-existent. There are germane questions that require looking into, and of course, the raft of cases of politically exposed persons acquiring state assets for pittance are germane issues that we need to ask questions
I see.
about.
Okay.
And if they need to return those assets, they should return those assets. And I'm sure the Attorney General will be sharing with us the options that he intends to roll out. But if I need to assure Ghanaians, it is that under the watch of His Excellency, no one will be unjustifiably
Okay.
brought under any hammer for no wrong done. No one. So if
Okay.
you've done no wrong, if you have engaged in no loot, if you have not breached any criminal or civil, law of this country, you should sleep easy every day, even if you are a key member of the outgoing
So,
administration.
okay, let's hear from Mary then, because Mary, I'm interested in the trajectory of the country. Over the last 4 years, no significant change in our ratings. And of course, you work with the likes of Transparency International in assessing how the country performs when it comes to our, index on the corruption league globally. Do you feel that oral will have anything to do in terms of influencing our performance now, knowing that at least we've stagnated over the years?
Good evening, Blessing. Good evening to you, Shabima, and to Vincent on the other hand. I believe that the fight against corruption, as we have indicated severally during past administrations, has to do with a lot more than the optics. There is a lot more action required to do or make any significant gains when it comes to the fight against corruption. Let me say tomorrow, Transparency International will be sharing again the 2024 Corruption Perception Index across the globe. And so watch out for it in the morning first thing.
I don't want to wait, as a newsman for tomorrow morning. Give us a sense of what's likely to happen. Are we doing any better?
I am not sure about that. You see that tomorrow. So for me, I believe that this is a clarion call to all Ghanaians that we need to do a lot more than just talk and the rhetoric to gain any points. And let me say that in the indices, the various indices that are used for the calculation of the corruption perception index, questions that are asked includes the independence of our audit institutions, how governments, and so it takes it from the point of the various arms of government. So the executive, how has the executive fought corruption when it comes to procurement, when it comes to administrative injustices, when it comes to issues around abuse of power and abuse of discretion. And then when it comes to efforts government has put in place to ensure that it fights corruption and fights it exhaustively, not just with the rhetoric. And so I have been on record to say that we have heard in the past, if you all agree with me, very beautiful sloganeering, very beautiful statements being made. And then at the end of the day, we see so much disappointment when it comes to evidence. There are issues that have been named and yet we do nothing about. These are very serious issues. And for me, it is heartwarming. I'm not saying this government has done anything that great, but it is heartwarming that some effort is being put in place to document. Again, I have said that even as we document these issues, we need to also then ensure that after the documentation, we would not go to bed resting. We need to act and act quickly. We know the Attorney General has limitations when it comes to the office, the number of people there. And so investigations could take time from experience with other offices. And so we want to see, we the people of Ghana, as Shamima has indicated, have a very low appetite now and a low tolerance level for promise and fail. And so it is incumbent on this government to show by example that we are no more interested in the rhetoric. And as I've indicated, there are many more indicators in the CPI that will tell you that if you continue on this trajectory, then in the years to come, we would be making some significant gains, not just by the rhetoric, but by the evidence of the efforts we put in place.
I see.
So how are we investigating and how are we sanctioning corruption?
Precisely.
By government?
The indices you're talking about now would be assessing, to be fair, the previous administration, correct? Because this would be...
it's 2024.
2024. And I'm not a prophet, but looking at the fact that even civil society applications to the oral team go way beyond 100. You have about 400 cases or complaints that you've filed as civil society to this committee. It does appear that our rankings may not have been too good in 2024, is it?
Listen, let's see what happens tomorrow. Certainly, we will share this information and we will discuss it as well. And the good thing for me is that it's coming at this time when we are having this discussion. And for me, I would also want to see that government particularly takes interest in the discussion and let's interrogate the index to see where we can make some gains, because we are available to talk about this. We are available to share insights on how we can work together to improve our corruption scores going forward, or the anti-corruption fight going forward. Other countries have done it, and so for us, it is very easy to also achieve that. So let's see how it happens. And I believe I have been on record to say that for me, oral as a committee is not a policy. Oral as a policy goes beyond the committee. And now the committee has handed over the reports they've received. So now let's see how oral is activated when it comes to the investigations. And then when we begin prosecutions, when people then go to court to also defend themselves. And if we are able to make significant gains in supporting some of these reports with evidence. Let me say quickly again that we have been put on record as also receiving some cases when it comes to corruption through the platform we use called the ALAC, the Advocacy and Legal Advice Center. You would see that people are quick to make allegations, but sometimes when it comes to then supporting these allegations with evidence, it becomes a problem. However, I am very sure, I'm confident that the government machinery put together should be able to navigate the challenge I have spoken to, because in our case, we would have to work with others to uncover some evidence before we proceed to then hand them over to the investigative agencies. But I'm very sure that the Attorney General's department, working in tandem with other institutions of state who have the mandate to also fight corruption, would be doing a very good job at this. If they put it to heart and they commit, as I've heard Shamima, I've heard the president, and I've heard the Honorable Okujeto speak to. We just wait to see, because it has been said that the sweetness of the pudding is in the eating. And so we await that.
I want to explore one more issue with you before I bring in Vincent and hear from Shamima on this. If the president wakes up tomorrow to our index and is reading perhaps the feedback without disclosing perhaps our score to us, which areas would you want the country or the government now to work on and improve on?
So even before we share the statement, I can tell you for a fact that there are certain indicators which are very critical. So for the optics, the fight against corruption, the independence of our legislature, the independence of our judiciary, and how the turnaround time for some issues of adjudications go. Do we reflect the investigations we have done into the adjudication process? And then how fast is this? Do we have courts that are set aside to fight corruption and also criminal crimes? Do we see the fairness and justice in these systems? Again, the executive's role in the fight against corruption. Are we seeing that there are issues of nepotism when it comes to appointments into government? Is the public sector, the civil service doing so on a very independent basis, or we are just turning around numbers as we go along? And so if you look at, this was for last year, we have a new one for tomorrow. So you'll be seeing that. Again, we want to see, is the presidency or the executive resourcing the institutions of state that are supposed to be fighting corruption doing so? Are we seeing that government, number one? If I could read some of the questions, let me read something very quickly for you. Then you understand where we are coming from. But then critically, the executive's role is very, very important, and we must all then be looking at how to get the executive to do some of these things as quickly as possible. And then let me quickly say, for us, one of the things we want to see in the fight against corruption, is there anything that government is doing when it comes to public sector accountability, access to information, and state capture, which we have mentioned? How is government dealing with this? Prevention mechanisms against corruption in the public sector. Then the various questions then come in. Corruption prevention and legal enforcement against acts of corruption. Budget transparency, misappropriation of funds, bribery, merit-based appointments in the public sector, red tape, whistleblower protection. Then we are talking about guardrails against conflict of interest, market manipulation, and so on and so forth. And so you see that as I talk, you would realize that this have been, bribery is also one of them. Bribery and corruption in the public sector. Corruption as is it a problem at all in the country that we are talking to?
Right.
And then other forms of corruption which we've mentioned: influence peddling, abuse of discretion, abuse of power, judicial and legislative branches, and how they are seen.
Okay, I get it. You just don't want to give us the. I see you don't want to give us the privilege of knowing what will be released to in the next few hours, if I may call it as such. But of course, it's obvious where you're pointing us to. Let me hear from Vincent, because your side described oral as a witch hunting tool. Now it's becoming evident that they were just in to gather much more information. Are you satisfied that more work ought to be exacted on this by the Attorney General before any prosecutions may follow?
Well, let me say a very good evening to you, to Madam Mary and Shamima. First and foremost, let me indicate that this work of the oral committee is just a needless justification of the opposition propaganda. All the propaganda that they went about during opposition seems to be, as it were, justified. And for that matter, that is how they are coming about with this confused state of a committee. Why do I say so? I took time to read the documents that is being bandied around as one of the justifications for the AG to open an investigation into the oral committee, into some of these corrupt practices. One of them is a supposed corruption at the 13th African Games. I took my time to read what they meant by that corrupt, or if you like, alleged corruption that surrounded the 13th African Games. I saw only one document, a document of the committee of the 13th African Games seeking for sponsorship from BOST. Then I asked myself, how do you classify this as an alleged corruption that needs investigation? Because Parliament approved 100 million Ghana cedis money or funds for the 13th African Games Committee, and the committee went ahead to seek for sponsorship. So because of that, there's a suspicion of allegation. This is what has been sent to the president for the president to also, as it were, task his AG to investigate whether there's a corruption. And you can check, it is in their document. And I find it very difficult, and that's how come I have had cause to say that after the work of this oral committee, I have no doubt in my mind that there will be a number of defamation suits against this committee. Because when you attempt to justify your propaganda when you're in opposition without recourse to the proper procedures in dealing with alleged corruption, i.e., state institutions like UOCO, state institutions like CID, and all the other institutions, including the special prosecutor, if you want to sidestep them and attempt to be doing work that is not within the jurisdiction of the supposed committee, this is what you get.
Okay, Vincent, have you read the entire 2,000 complaints the committee is talking about?
Well, it was sent today. Obviously, no one has been able to read all the entire
Have you read or taking a look at the 36 priority cases, and is this one of them?
And I'm saying that the thing has been sent to the president. Obviously, not all of us can read everything today.
I'm asking if you've
but I'm
gone through
some examples to you.
36 of them, because there are over 2,000 cases.
For example, right. National Service Scheme. They are making an allegation. In fact, with the document that I saw, with the picture of one of the deputies, Gifty Owari, and with the kind of allegations that they are making there, I ask myself, if you're not able to succeed and provide cogent evidence and win in court, what happened? You've sold the integrities of people. I am not saying that if persons who are in government or who have been in government, there are suspicions of corrupt practices that have been engaged by these persons, a government or an AG cannot be seen to be doing or cannot prosecute them, or if you like, commence an investigation to prosecute them. I'm not saying so. It will have to be done, but as I said, proper procedures will have to be followed with the proper institutions. Number two, the credibility of the people or the persons, talking about the fact that we are going to make sure that persons who have been named in this report of the committee is also very important. It's also important because 2 days after the appointment of the current AG, and when he was sworn in, just 2 days after, we saw him with a number of nollie prosequas and withdrawals. Though distinctive, it has its own consequences. If they filed prosequa, it has its own consequences. If they filed withdrawal, it has its own consequences in law. But my point is the credibility of the people saying that, or the people saying that they want to go and prosecute people. It goes ahead to confirm our suspicion that it is just a mere witch hunt and a justification of opposition propaganda, just to let people know that indeed we are doing something. Because if indeed you are committed to your anti-corruption stand, I do not see why you will not allow the processes that have started in court to finish. And let me educate my sister Shamima.
Vincent, you are a lawyer. You are a lawyer. Just hold on for me. You are a lawyer. I mean, yes. Okay,
I have read a number of cases where some of these cases can last for about 13 years, 17 years. You rightly said, justice grinds slowly. On what basis can anybody say that because a case has been in court, and a case in point is Esiama. His case started in 2019, 5 years. How do you say that it is enough justification to file a nolle prosequi or a withdrawal because you think that there are no basis whatsoever to, as it were, prosecute such a person?
A few questions for you, so we can hear from Shamima on this. You are a lawyer, you're a member of parliament. If you had any inclination of criminality going on in this country, such that it may cost the state, which institution will you resort to?
We have the CID, right?
The CID can't act without the Attorney General's delegated powers. You're a lawyer, sir.
No, I'm just saying that.
No, I'm just asking you a pretty direct question. Who will you, of course, resort to?
I'm saying that the CID is clothed with investigative powers, right?
Yeah, but in terms of prosecution, they would need the Attorney General's powers. Even the OSP, you look at the OSP Act, they're still working with the delegated powers of the Attorney General.
But you see, the prosecution, or if you like, the prosecutors at the AG sometimes uses the CID. Are you aware or you're not aware?
But they are acting with the delegated powers again of the states, the Attorney General. Yeah, precisely. Yeah, precisely. So we all agree that the AG would have to do some more work.
You see, normally or sometimes, if you want your prosecution to go the way you want it to go, you have to seek for expert advice and you have to allow the experts to lead it. Is that not the case? It is on that basis that the president's one of his first green letters that was written was geared towards the IGP to investigate election killings from 2020 and 2024, because the president believed that the CID that is clothed with that expertise to be able to investigate that matter or such matters. And so I do not see how we allow some of these things, if you like, to be done by the oral committee. And the oral committee will tell you we do not have investigative powers, blah, blah. So what was the purpose there? Because if you look at their own document, I think the first or second page, they've written there that they are going to investigate alleged corruption. Check their document.
Okay. I'll come back to you, Vincent. Let's get the reaction from Shamima, because she's been listening in. And Shamima, we're getting an indication that the corruption indices or the index will be released latest in the morning, right?
Yes.
Yes. So your expectations on that, and then you've listened to Vincent as well, raise some key issues about even the integrity of the committee.
Right. I mean, with regards to the PCI expected tomorrow, I think you and I can all hazard a guess, because we lived the year 2014. It was the year that we saw the greatest erosion of trust in public accountability institutions. We lived that era. We expressed those sentiments. So I'm sure tomorrow is just going to give us figures to go by and to get all of us back around the reflections table and to really decide that we want to deal with this matter of corruption and, the threat to our democracy, where, a generation of young people even are fantasizing about military era because of how our democracy has failed to truly transform many of our countries and to provide the necessary opportunities for the teeming mass of youth that remain uneducated, unskilled, and with low to no jobs at all. So we're all expectant to see what the reports will hold tomorrow. But at the end of the day, it will take us and committed leadership to rebuild trust in these institutions. And I think if any leader in our Fourth Republic is in a pole position to reset Ghana, it is His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, who has shown real commitment to the cause. I think that my friend and brother, Honorable Vincent, this evening has selected some very convenient mis-examples to try to poke holes at the work of Oral.
Yeah, but
I'm
he
not
says these
surprised
cases
because
are in the
Vincent's
document.
political party
He says the
is the
cases.
party
He
that
says the
said
cases are in
review
the document.
to say, pardon?
He says the cases are in the document, submitted by Oral.
I'm saying that it's a very convenient mixed example that he's given because he's just conceded that he doesn't have access to the full report. He does not have access. You have played back to him the statistics, the dashboard on the complaints, the petitions, the comprehensive investigations that went into the 36 specific priority areas. He shouldn't worry. In the next days, all those details, as I've said, through the Attorney General will come, will be published on air. But just to reassure that, again, if we're dealing with the New Patriotic Party, we must understand that sometimes maybe their conception or deliberate misunderstanding of policies is the real propaganda, not a party that says that let us fight corruption because Ghanaians say that they've had enough.
Yeah, but
Our
Shamima,
electoral outcomes
if you're
over
putting the
the
names,
electoral cycles are indicative of a new generation of Ghanaian citizens who will no longer lie down and be done over.
But
So
if you're putting
again,
the names of these
it is the
individuals
same
out, if you're
NPP
putting the
that
names
thought
of
that
these individuals
reviewing
out, just a
education
minute,
means, pardon?
just a minute. If you're putting the names of these individuals out, even before the commencement of investigations or further investigations by the Attorney General, that's worrisome, isn't it, for the integrity of some of the individuals?
All the scandals under the New Patriotic Party had individual people and names who were at the center of those projects, who led some of these, events. They had names. You published those names in your publication of those scandals. It is not the NDC contriving to call out people's names. If you're a member, if you're a head of a national service scheme, and it is found per your own log of service personnel that there are ghost names under your watch, whether you benefited directly or indirectly, you have questions to answer. And that is also the cost of being in public office. You are superintending over public and national resources. When there are questions about projects or programs or suspected corruption issues, naturally, the individuals at the helm of affairs would have questions to answer. Of course, we are all in public office. Of course, we don't all want to be accused of things that we are wrong, that we are innocent about. But I'm saying that it comes with the office. And in the next couple of days, why is it that we jail people and later find them out to be innocent? There will always be a certain level of collateral. So again, to reassure Honorable Vincent, Oral, as we explained, just as we explained about what Free Senior High School Review was, which you couldn't understand, Oral was a preparatory team that gathered information that people were citizens of this country were offering on a daily basis. Cases that bordered around the dissipation of state assets, corruption matters, questions that required, answers to. So he should not worry at all. The right channels will now be deployed in exacting justice from those that are expected to face justice, and those that have been found to have done no wrong, those,
Right.
In our
we need to go.
books,
We need to go. We need to go. So for the sake of time, yes, for the sake of time,
people were jailed.
Indeed.
NDC people were jailed under the law of causing.
Yeah, we've run out of time. So what we'll do now, I'll give you the final word, Mary, to just wrap up for us in 30 seconds. But let me also give, some few seconds to you, Vincent, your brief remarks, and then I give the rest of the closing remarks to Mary. We've lost Vincent. So to you, Mary, as we wrap up.
So for me, I think the fight against corruption without a doubt, is a winnable one. And it takes commitment of government to do so. It takes courage, yes, in our settings, because of the excessive politicization of the fight, state capture, and also elements of campaign financing, which we all must agree is the cause of most of the corruption, because people must be reimbursed for the huge sums they put into campaigns to electors to these positions. But then it takes a strong-willed person to ensure that this is done. And for this time around, we in civil society will support and we will speak out. And in our support, we would advocate. In our support, we will identify the wrongs and then provide some mitigating measures to support government to do so. We only hope that government would be open enough and trustworthy. Like the president has started, we hope that he continues in that stead, and then we would all be able to contribute. The people of Ghana are waiting, anticipating, and conscious that we need to change the trend. And this government.
Indeed. Grateful for your time. Mary Ada is the Executive Director for the Ghana Integrity Initiative. Grateful to you, Shamima Muslim, and also to Vincent Kwase for joining us tonight on PM Express. We've run out of time. I'm blessed as kind, of course. We'll do this conversation again. Thank you all for spending time with us. Bye-bye.